Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. With the Arena World Championship tournament just announced and the signups being open, I thought it would be fun to construct a tier list and try and predict which specializations, if the tournament were to happen tomorrow, would be the specializations most likely to win the entire thing. And if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, obviously, the meta at the moment is pretty quick, it's pretty fast, but there are some specializations that are very tanky. And I think that the level of durability is the most important quality to a specialization's likelihood at success in the Arena World Championship. Historically, the best compositions have been the most durable ones. That has been the main characteristic, but there are other things to take into account as well for this discussion. Now, Affliction Warlock is a powerhouse. The specialization is doing an incredible amount of damage. However, when it ranks in durability, that is where I do think it begins to trail off a bit, especially against some of the more popular melee DPS specializations at the moment, like Windwalker Monks or Fury Warriors. I think that it does begin to struggle on an element of durability. But damage output, it is very remarkable. It could definitely be a specialization that wins the tournament, but I think due to its little limitations in defense relative to other specializations, I'm only going to be putting it onto the A tier for now, and the S tier is going to be reserved for special, high quality, high durability specializations like the Arcane Mage that I haven't even said anything yet, and I'm putting it up onto S tier. And the main reason for this is it is incredibly tanky. The overpowered barrier PvP talent for Arcane especially is strong. Basically, when your barrier is fully absorbed, your blink puts you into invisibility. Basically gives you ice block every time your barrier is absorbed. Your barrier is basically an ice block for like 5 seconds, and then it gives you another ice block for 3 seconds. So you're getting like 8 seconds of ice block every slightly less than 30 seconds. So you're pretty much unkillable in that sense. I think you're incredibly durable. An Arcane Mage with a Feral Druid or a Rogue, I'm anticipating to be a pretty common setup, at least in North America. Now in Europe, mages may prefer to play Frost instead. I think that it's still likely a very good option, but I think Arcane, it's one of the most slept on specializations. Now, Arms Warrior, I do not think we are going to see probably at all. I'm going to rank it very low, which is might be contrary to what the ladder representation says, right? If we looked at any sort of graphs related to ladder play, Arms Warrior is one of the most popular specializations. I do think it's a very popular spec, it's a very fun spec, and that's why a lot of people play it. But as far as durability in the AWC, I think it's one of the easiest specializations to kill in the game at the moment. Damage output is solid, but uptime can be difficult. And when you're talking like, Arcane Mages, Feral Druids, Hunters, these types of specializations, yeah, I don't see Arms Warrior really having a shot in a tournament setting. Assassination Rogue, I do think is remarkably powerful. Honestly, the Rogue specializations are going to be like the hardest to rank as to like which one are players going to dial in on, because they usually dial in on the one that's the most unkillable. Sometimes that's Subtlety Rogue with how many vanish charges it's had in the past, or Conduits that give you shields when you vanish. Sometimes it's Outlaw because it's just passively really durable. It has high stamina. Sometimes it's Assassination. So this is a really tough one for the Rogues. So I'm going to rank this one a little bit lower. I think mostly due to durability reasons, much like Affliction. I think that it is a phenomenal spec, like Rogue, Affliction, really good composition, but in a tournament setting, a bit worried about uptime, its ability to execute on some of the more powerful classes, and maybe getting run down by some of the specializations that I am leaving for this S tier position. But it could, in the hands of the best players ever, it could definitely make a run. But we do have, legendary warlocks like Chanimal retiring, who if he didn't retire, then maybe this is a setup that I could see going all the way. But I think that it might fall a little bit short of some other options. Now, Balanced Druid, durability is not there at all. Boomkin Rogue can be a solid composition, but I think in most cases you're going to choose Arcane or Shadow Priest just due to durability. So for me, I think Boomkin's probably a bit more of a mid pick in a tournament setting. I think it's going to struggle with the Jungles, the Feral Druids. It's going to struggle with the Rogues. It's going to struggle with the Beast Mastery Hunters. It's going to struggle with the Affliction Locks and Shadow Priest. But I could see like some Boomkin Rogue main teams maybe clutching out some really high burst wins with this and maybe taking it, which is why I'm leaving it on B as opposed to dragging it down to C or D. But I think its odds are much lower. Beast Mastery Hunter has a huge likelihood of taking it. I think that Jungle Cleave is one of the most powerful compositions in the game, although it may struggle with Shadow Priest composition, so we may end up getting like this triangle of rock, paper, scissors of like the Jungle Cleaves beat everything that is in the Shadow Priest, but then the Shadow Priest beat the Jungle Cleaves, but then everything else beats the Shadow Priests, and it could create likely a very interesting tournament flavor, honestly, if we are able to get it to that level, because normally it's like one archetype of composition or classes dominates the whole time, but I'm thinking that may not likely be the case. And remember that changes could come in, and I'll be updating with those changes on this channel live, and we'll be reviewing tier lists, editing them, and updating them. This is a prediction, right? This is still pretty far into the future. There could be changes that happen, and I could be wrong, and we'll always be revising this so you're getting the most accurate information. But this would be my current assessment of what I've observed from top ranking players, what I've experienced myself. Demonology Warlock, I think that it's too easily countered. It's very easy to deny its damage. You know when it's coming. It's very predictable. I think in that sense, in like a tournament frame, that it's probably not as great. It does actually have some pretty decent damage output. So like maybe there's like a shadow play that could come out of nowhere, like a Shadow Priest Demo lock team, and maybe do something. But I think it's a little bit less likely. So I'm gonna leave it on to B tier for now. Destruction Warlock, again, durability. I think you're gonna really have a tough time with Windwalkers, with Feral Druids, these jungles. Like, I think that these are really hard classes to survive, and those are what some of the highest level of veteran players in Europe, for example, have available to them. And there's not a lot of like Destro diehard mains. It's usually only if Destro is like clearly the front runner as a spec, which I don't think that's necessarily the case right now. So I think Destro probably comes in a little bit more mid as well. Devastation Evoker, this is literally only because of Cassidy's team in Europe that I think we might even see one, because they just play Feral Druid Devastation Evoker every season in AWC. But as far as like a standalone spec, I think you're probably the best of the B tier. And maybe Destro is better than Demo. Probably the best of the B tier, but I think probably a cut below where I would anticipate Affliction to be. Discipline Priest is very obvious, right? Like this guy is just the best healer by far. He's doing so much healing, so much output, so much damage output. Really good crowd control avoidance, really powerful spec. Elemental Shaman, I think the spec is honestly getting better with time. I could actually see it. What stand a chance against the jungles with like a rogue Ellie or a feral Ellie. See, like if the Feral Ellies came out a lot when the meta was Feral Mage, and then Feral Ellie came out of nowhere as like a counter to that. I think that it could. I definitely think that it could. I think that it's tanky enough, right? And as far as durability, I think it's actually probably better than most of these specs. Maybe situationally Devastation is better because it can just kite melee forever, but the likelihood of like double melee other than counter comp situations is probably pretty low. I'm going to put Ellie up here on the A tier. I think that it actually could have a shot overall, but it's still going to be less than the specs on the S tier, and I think it's mostly due to its output. But I think it's being slept on. I think as things go out and as we get more gear and more stats, I actually think Ellie is going to get better and better. Enhance. There's literally only one team I think that's going to run this, right? Assuming that they compete again, which is Saul's team, F tier. Do I believe in it? Well, Windwalker's really strong. It could get carried by a Windwalker. I could see an Enhanced Shaman getting carried by a Windwalker, but I could also see an Ellie getting carried by a Windwalker. So in that frame, I might put it here. I want to put it here. I'm going to put it on C tier for now. I think it is a little bit lower. You could carry kicking and screaming, drag an Enhanced Shaman across the floor to victory as a Windwalker. I think a Windwalker could do that, but you would get like destroyed by these types of comps with Arcane Mage, I think, and really have a hard time. Feral Druid, another one again. It's part of the Jungle Cleave, but you're gonna run Feral Mage, Feral Hunter, Feral Warlock, Feral Ellie, right? Like it's the melee formula that can go into anything basically. So not putting it on S tier would be very naive, I think, from me. Fire Mage, I think it's unlikely. I just don't see it as durable as Arcane or the same type of control as Frost. I think that those are going to be problems for it. While it's performing better, I'm going to throw it in a little bit lower. Like I really, just because of how good Arcane and Frost is, I don't think we'd see it at all. So like I'm actually going to put it a little bit lower than where I was first going to put it. I think Arcane and Frost are just way better. There would be no reason to try and put it in here. Now Frost as well, due to its durability, there's a lot of specs up here, which honestly is good. Like the more specs towards the top end means that it's likely that we're not just going to see one composition just kind of like farming everything the whole game, which is nice. But Frost and Arcane durability are really good. I don't know if I want to say Arcane is better than Frost. Again, it's going to come down to expertise of the mage players. Some mages only play Frost and don't know how to play Arcane. Other mages only play Arcane and don't don't play any Frost, and at the tournament level, like it's only a handful of mages that consistently make it into those top echelon spots. So kind of depends on the region, it depends on the mage, but I think both of them have capabilities of going all the way. Frost DK, I would say, is really unlikely. I think maybe possibly a little bit more likely than these two, just because it could go for like some cheesy one shots, like a Dev Evoker, Frost DK type of composition, or a Windwalker, but and maybe not even a Windwalker. A little bit higher, but not by much from the D tier here. Fury Warrior, I'm going to put onto B tier. I think it does have way better damage output than Arms. Honestly, it could maybe be a little bit higher. Do I think it's the same likelihood as Assassination Rogue? I don't think so. Which, again, Fury Warrior I think is like the most popular melee on the ladder right now. It absolutely shreds. But I think at a tournament setting, when these are the comps, that I'm anticipating, like you'll see a Fury Warrior counterpicked into a Shadow Priest or something like that for sure. So in a counterpick situation, do I think Fury Warrior could do it? Yes. But how often is that going to happen? Again, Europe, we don't see a lot of Shadow Priests almost ever, but North America has quite a handful of them. So in North America, is it? I'm going to leave it here for now, but it could be B or A, to be fair. Havoc Demon Hunter, again, I think it's like probably a mid likelihood that we see maybe a couple of them sign up and try and go for a run with it. Maybe like a Boomkin Demon Hunter team or something like that. I just feel like it's too easy to control for a lot of these classes. But it could be just like an overall average pick. I think it is overall going to perform better than these guys in terms of consistency. It's less cheesy. You can get more uptime. Has more control of the game. Holy Priest, I mean, we'll see one because Zenlin will play it. Do I think that it'll win? Probably not. I'm going to put it here just because Zenlin is literally carrying the Holy Priest in the tournament mantle by himself. But it's probably pretty unlikely. Holy Paladin, I think it's just mid. There might be a couple of Paladin mains who just, they played it a lot because it was really strong last season. They're still like warmed up on it, so they still want to play it. But I think that it's got to have fallen off pretty significantly now to Disc Priest and Resto Shaman. Marksmanship Hunter could be a counter selection for Beast Mastery. Maybe like interchange Beast Mastery and Marksman depending on the matchup that you have. But overall, I think Beast Mastery is much better. And I think it's actually so much so that I kind of like, which is weird because like on the ladder can just sometimes crank, right? Like you can get like 3 million, 4 million aim shots. But as far as like tournament, I think it's too easy to counter. And a lot of these melee have so many stuns, disarms, control. You can see it coming at that level of play, as opposed to solo shuffle where there's no communication and people are just YOLO. I think maybe it's even lower. I'm gonna put it maybe as the best of the B tier. Mistweaver Monk, I think it's unlikely that we see it. Again, I think it's too easily countered. It gets farmed by mages and hunters. It's all these heavy CC classes. The output's not as good. I think it's probably pretty unlikely. I'm putting it even lower than Holy Priest. Outlaw Rogue's a really hard one. I need to leave this one until a little bit later because it's way too hard. Prez Evoker, you also struggle with rogues, and you're probably going to struggle with a lot of these, possibly like swapping to you and just one-shotting you. But you do have insanely high output, and I could see like a Prez Boomy Rogue definitely having a shot. I'm gonna put it onto A tier for now, but I definitely see its limitations and its weaknesses. But I don't know, like a really like Sea-Doo's team maybe, or Corky's team again if they go for it again in Europe could have a shot. I think. Which is how much burst damage it can actually output, but you will really struggle getting really close quarters with a lot of the comps that I'm expecting to be at the top. Resto Shaman definitely is a spec that I think could win. I'm going to put it up equal with Disc Priest, which is a pretty bold move in my position, but I think it has a good shot. I think it's really disruptive towards a lot of these classes, and it's really good with like a Shadow Priest. So like Shadow Priest Shaman X is going to be, I think, a pretty common comp, whereas like Disc Mage X is going to be another archetype, and those would kind of be the two main archetypes of the comps that I expect to win, and then you'll substitute out the healer based on like what is the next available healer if our healer doesn't main that. Resto Druid, another really hard one. Maybe I'll rank the tanks, but I really don't. It's possible that you can see a Prot Warrior, but I don't really want to spend too much time talking about it. I don't think it's going to be a huge thing, but maybe it is. Resto Druid, my personal experience is that's horrible and miserable, but then I've talked to other Druids like Flop, who seems to think once you get the 4-set bonus, which gives you more hot application, that it's not as bad. So I'm taking the safe route and saying it's probably better than Holy Paladin or close to the same as Holy Paladin. But I don't. I just feel like you get absolutely destroyed by the amount of purge that's going to be up here on this top side. Like it's all purges. This is literally all purges. We haven't even got to Shadow Priest, right? Which is this is a pretty auto pop. There's a pretty easy auto pop up here. This is literally just all purge. It's all anti-resto druid. Even with the 4 set, I feel like it'll be so hard. I want to put it lower, and the only reason I'm putting even on B tier is because Flop is probably propagandaing me into resto druid being better than what I think it's going to be for the tournament. Ret Paladin. Oh my God, you guys. They fixed some of your bugs. Not all your bugs, but they fixed some of your bugs. And it is a little bit better for you. Now, are you going to be in the tournament? You could be good into like these jungles maybe. I don't know the matchup enough for Ret Hunter versus jungle. I would think that you're going to struggle a lot though with Rets or with Arcanes and Shadows. These are 2 specs that you're like a no touchy. You can't really do much. I don't think it's so bad that it'll like maybe not be seen at all, but at the same time, not a lot of people are dedicated to Ret. It's like, unless it's again clearly a Forerunner as like the best melee, which it isn't at the moment, there's no like main Ret player that plays it no matter what in the tournament, other than maybe Kara. And if he doesn't sign up, then I don't imagine we'll see many. But I'm going to put Ret like here in the middle with Demon Hunter probably. It might pop up as like someone trying to make it work, especially if they do more bug fixes for it. Maybe it's down here in a 3v3 tournament setting. Maybe we'll put it here. I feel like Enhance has to be higher than though if I do this, but we'll put it down to C tier for now. Subtlety Rogue. Oh my God, dude, the rogues are going to be so hard to rank because I don't know which one people are settling in on, and everybody's propaganda like, oh, sub rogue's bad, and I'm like, no, you're out of your mind. But then you're like, outlaw rogue is bad, and I'm like, I can kind of see that, but at the same time, like, the history of outlaw rogue has been so good and consistent with it. It's like there's no way that it's bad. Let's just do the easy ones. Windwalker is definitely going to be a spec I think that we see. I think especially like Windwalker Mage, Windwalker Shadow Priest. I don't know about Windwalker Hunter. I think it's going to be mostly the Windwalker Shadow Priest Shaman, Windwalker Mage Priest possibly. And it depends on if it's better than a Rogue or a Feral in those types of mirrors. And if it's not, maybe we don't see it at all. But I could see it being picked as a counter to the Shadows. Like if the Ferals and the Rogues are struggling with Shadow Priest, that's when you bring a Windwalker in. It's kind of like the trump card to take them down. Unholy DK, I would say it's very unlikely. I'm going to put it down here. I think it's very unlikely. I could see the Frost one-shot cheese, like maybe you see it, but I don't think it's going to win the thing. But Unholy, I think, would be really unlikely to have like a deep run. Augmentation is another one, really unlikely to have a deep run. It's just the cheese. It has the cheese one shot, but it's really, Aug has only really ever seen tournament play as like a counter to melee cleaves, and I don't see this as like a melee cleave tournament meta, so I don't really see you having a place in that regard. Survival Hunter, like maybe slightly higher than this lower tier, just because you do have really good range burst damage, but it's still probably unlikely. So I'll put you down to see here. Again, Big Mix, if he signs up, again, it just depends on how many people are like main Survival Hunter players that have dedicated themselves to it, so they can compensate for the spec gap in order to get to those final rankings. And then finally, now we got to talk about the hardest specs, like which one is where. I think Subtlety. I'm putting Subtlety Rogue up on S tier. I think that like Subtlety Arcane, Subtlety Frost, I think these could be really good. I do think Outlaw is as well. And these are very hard to delineate between the two. I'm gonna put Outlaw a little lower because I think its damage is worse. I think its damage is worse than Sub at the moment. And its survivability isn't like as high enough. But the thing is it might depend on matchup. Maybe you play Outlaw into Arcane. Maybe you play Asa into Shadow. I think the Rogue specs are a little bit more interchangeable. But I'm leaning into Subtlety Rogue as kind of like the go-to, because it's doing, I've seen some Subtlety Rogues on overall damage doing as much as Shadow Priests, which is very, very high. It's very, very high. And it's kind of like this trifecta of melee that are going to be interchangeable with these range. Mostly it'll be Feral and Hunter together, but Feral Mage Shadow Priest, Feral whatever, like these are interchangeable. These are kind of like the main comps. I think these comps have a good chance as like interchangeable with these. With a couple of these guys from down here possibly as well in some positions, but likelihood that these guys are going to be kind of running the show, and we probably won't see almost any or very limited. We probably won't see any or very limited, or maybe a small amount, and mostly these guys in the tournament meta. Those are my expectations at the moment, with the current information that we have, which is always evolving. So as I said, hit the subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Who is your favorite team to be taking the AWC? Am I totally off base with these specializations and rankings moving into the tournament season? Let me know in the comments down below. Roast me if you want to. Engagement is engagement nonetheless. So thank you guys very much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one.